Well, in this video, I want to go over a lot of the weeds that you're going to find in your yard and help you identify them. And identifying can be a big part of learning to control the weeds, especially if it's one that's tough to control. And if you know the name of it, you might can do a little bit of research to figure out how to control it in the lawn. And then sometimes we just want to know the name of it for our own personal knowledge. So today I am out here in springtime. We're going to be able to find a lot of mature, cool season weeds and maybe a few warm season weeds. Some of those haven't started appearing yet. Maybe later we can do another video showing you a lot of the names of the warm season weeds. So I want to also talk to you a little bit about just the categories of weeds and how we look at it from a weed control perspective. Let's get started right now. All right, so when I'm talking about different categories of weeds, you heard me already mention we got cool season weeds and warm season weeds. So what I mean by that is our cool season weeds, I'm in Alabama, okay, so these time frames may adjust slightly for you, but in general, you have a group of weeds that germinate sometime in the fall, and they like the cooler weather. They die out when it gets hot, and we call those cool season weeds. And by the way, a weed, we're going to define that as any unwanted plant. So if I show you clover today and you say, I love clover, I want clover in my yard, then for you, clover's not a weed. But for me, I don't want clover in my yard, so for me, clover's a weed. If I show you Bermuda grass, well, Bermuda grass is what my lawn's made out of. But if you live up north and you got Bermuda in your lawn, it's a weed. Okay, same thing, opposite would be true for me. If I've got a big fescue clump in there, ryegrass clump, you may have a whole yard that's fescue or ryegrass. For me, it's a weed. But then there's a whole nother group of weeds that are warm season weeds, typically gonna germinate sometime in the spring or late winter maybe, and they're gonna thrive in that hot weather, but they don't like the cold weather. A lot of them might die off when it starts getting that first frost in the fall, or even sometimes before it freezes. The temperatures start cooling down, and these warm season weeds do not like that. A lot of times, about the time the cool season weeds are very mature, is when the warm season weeds are just now getting going. And when the warm season weeds are very mature is about the time when the cool season weeds are about to germinate. Now, one of the other ways that we want to differentiate weeds is between broadleaf weeds, grassy weeds, and sedges. Now, is that all the categories? I don't think so. There's probably more. I'm thinking of like a rush is a type of little round weed, I guess you would call it, in the lawn. It's a plant I don't want in my lawn that likes wet areas. But if we just keep it with those three big broad categories, broadleaf, grassy weeds, and sedges, then we can understand how to control those weeds. One reason that's important is because one herbicide might control broadleaf weeds but do nothing for grassy weeds or sedges. Another might control sedges and do nothing for grassy weeds or broadleaf weeds. But a lot of times you can combine multiple products so that you can control all of them, or just about all of them, with one combination. Or there's a lot of combination products that the manufacturers have already put together for you that can work on different types of weeds, which is a great thing. One last differentiation before I show you the weeds is I wanted to talk to you about annual weeds and perennial weeds. Maybe the best example I know of to talk to you about is crabgrass versus Dallas grass. I was looking at weeds the other day and I showed somebody a weed. He said, oh, it's crabgrass. Well, it was actually Dallas grass. And the reason that's important is because Dallas grass would be a perennial weed, where a crabgrass would be an annual weed. So an annual weed is going to come back from the seeds of last year's plant, would be my understanding, and regerminate, form a whole new plant, where a perennial weed is coming back from that same root. It's the same plant. It just might go dormant in the winter and come back again. So a pre-emergent would work great on an annual weed if you get it down before the annual weed germinates, but it's not going to do much for you on your perennial weeds. You're going to have to control those with a post-emergent. All right, I hope that background information was helpful. Let's get started taking a look at weeds. Let's see how many we can come up with. And as we do this, maybe we can call it an annual weed or a perennial weed. Maybe we can call it a broadleaf weed, sedge, or grassy weed. That might be helpful for you as well. All right, walking around in a Bermuda yard, it's starting to turn green, and whoa, here looks something different. So let's see what that is. So I would call this a weed. Now, what is this? Well, you might say, well, that looks kind of like centipede grass or St. Augustine grass. This is actually carpet grass, and here's a dead shoot. You can see the seed head. This has been from last year, but it has a real unique seed head. It has a Y, but then it has one more little kicker off the side of it. It's hard to see right here, but that looks like what that was, the one little kicker. So this would obviously be a grassy weed. It doesn't look nearly as uniform as centipede or St. Augustine for a lawn, so it's not really great to have in your lawn. But this is carpet grass, grassy weed, perennial weed, not an annual. It's going to come back same thing. You can see, you can kind of spot it, boom, or carpet grass right there. We use a product called Celsius to control that in a warm season lawn. Here's another one that could be confusing even to me, and this is where they really don't help us out any. What's this weed? This is called broom sedge. Now, broom sedge, I think, should be in its own category. It's just a real pain to deal with, you know. But it's called broom sedge, but it's not a sedge. So that's really inconvenient, and it is a perennial weed. Sometimes it's not hard to pull up if there's just a little bit of it. I use a product called Blindside to help control broom sedge. Speaking of Dallas grass, that's what a Dallas grass looks like. It's sort of coming back from winter, and as we're getting into spring, you see the Bermuda grass is sort of starting to turn green. And that's what a big clump of Dallas grass looks like. So that is a perennial grassy weed. About this one, cool season weed here. This is geranium, or wild geranium, I think they call it. Sometimes you might see Carolina geranium. I'm not sure if those are two different, or a different name for the same plant, not quite sure. But this would be an annual weed, so our pre-emergent could help with that. And of course, this is a broadleaf weed. What about this little guy right here? This will end up having a little purple flower on it in time when it gets mature. This is called field madder, F-I-E-L-D, madder, M-A-D-D-E-R. Annual weed, cool season weed, and it can be a little bit of a tough weed. That is a broadleaf weed, a product called Change Up I use a lot will control this. And I should say also in this video, if I get any of these wrongs, please correct me. I may not get them all right, so let's see. I think this one, and it could have a flower on it later on, I think this is called Vetch, V-E-T-C-H, broadleaf weed, and should be fairly easy to control in the lawn. I wanted to show you a couple here. You can see all of these growing in the yard, and a lot of times people will just say, oh, you got onions in the yard. Well, some of them are onions and some of them are garlic. I'm going to show you how to tell the difference. An onion typically, to me, grows with fewer plants, and when you break it off, it's going to be solid on the inside, where garlic typically has more leaves and it's going to be a hollow leaf. Now, it's hard to see because it's so small in there, but if it's solid, typically larger and less of them, onion. But if there's more and you break it off, I think the leaf, hollow leaf, garlic, solid leaf, onion. Those have a bulb. They're difficult to control. We use a product called methylfuron to control onions and garlic in the lawn. Now here's one that I think is called a fleabane, F-L-E-A-B-A-N-E. There's different varieties of fleabane. I don't know which one it is. You see it's starting to bloom here, and you see these type of leaves that are on here. Broadleaf, annual, cool season weed. Not 100% sure about this one, but these little small tiny lily pad things, there's a couple that are sort of in that category. I think this is dichondra. Other small ones like this that you might see, one called Creeping Charlie, but it has a more serrated edge on it, so it's not that. Pennywort is another one to look at, but I believe this one, this little lily pad guy here, is dichondra. And I should also go ahead and say I don't know the names of all the weeds. This is a common one that I see a lot. As you can see it here in bloom, you see the leaves here. This is called henbit. Annual weed, cool season weed, broadleaf weed. I like it when I find them out in the open like this. You can see it much better. This is called hairy bittercress. Can get a good bit bigger than this. You can see it's about to start blooming as well. Another cool season annual broadleaf weed. Now here's a good example of a dandelion without the big yellow flower that would certainly give it away. Another example of an onion. Just see how that's just like a single plant. Well, it does have a small one here, but this big single plant here, wild onion. But the dandelion, and then there's like false dandelions and other dandelions, you know, so I'm just going to call it a dandelion. I don't know if you want to explain how to differentiate between the two. That would be great. I learned a new one today. This is one I've been seeing in this area, and it's called a field pansy, I believe. Had to look it up, correct me if I'm wrong, but you look at we plant pansies in the fall, or at least we do at our house, and they do look like this, which makes a lot of sense. Has another name, alternative name says Johnny Jump Up. So I think I'll call it a field pansy, but if you want to call it Johnny Jump Up, that's fine with me. Here's a better example of field madder, which we looked at earlier there with some of the light purple flowers. Found a good example here. This is called Wild Violet. There it is with a more lighter bloom, and here's a darker purple. But you can see they have that heart-shaped leaf that makes them fairly easy to identify. They're tough to get rid of. We use, in cool season lawns, you can use a product that has triclopyr in it. I think Cool Power is one, maybe Sure Power. I'm not a cool season expert. And then for our warm season lawns, we typically use like a quinclorac type product, which is often used as a post-emergent for crabgrass. But this is Wild Violet. I'm gonna give you a chance to help me out. I keep seeing this one, and I feel like it's one I should know the name of, and I just don't know the name of it. So maybe I can learn from you. Leave it in the comments if you know the name of this weed. This weed right here, I don't know that it has a flower. Now this one looks pretty mature with no flower. There's a clear look of what the leaves look like. Here's a good example of a type of thistle. They got the real spiky points on the, basically thorns growing on the end of the leaves there. And I'm not sure, here's one beside it that also, it could be a different variety of thistle, because the leaves definitely look different, but they both have thorns. So I'm wondering if these are two different varieties of a thistle. If you look up bull thistle would be one, I believe. Here's a much more mature example of hairy bittercress. I was glad I was able to find this one. This one often can get confused with henbit. They do both have a similar purple flower, but the leaf is quite different. This one's called purple dead nettle. Oh, this is great. This is a much better example of the vetch than I saw earlier. You see it's about to have a purple flower, and see how it just grows like a kind of a long vine. You've got yellow wood sorrel, looks like a little clover. I have a yellow flower on it typically, but that is yellow wood sorrel. Certainly not the greatest example I've ever seen, but I finally did find a little bit of clover here. I'm not 100% sure. White clover is the one that I normally see in the lawn. It gets big with the big white blooms on it. I'm not sure if this is white clover or not. Not exactly a great sample, but I did want to show you a little bit of clover. Here's a good side-by-side example of the purple dead nettle versus the henbit. You can see here, purple dead nettle right here I'm spinning, and the henbit right here. And the leaves definitely look different. I like to say that when I'm playing cards, you know, the purple dead nettle looks more like spades. The henbit looks more like clubs as far as the leaf goes. This is a good example of annual blue-eyed grass. Again, I don't think it's actually a grassy weed. I wouldn't say misnamed it, but didn't help us out when they named it. You control it more like a broadleaf weed. Here's an example of chickweed, very common that you'll see. And then beside it, we've got cudweed, C-U-D. Weed, W-E-E-D. Here's a good example of annual bluegrass, or also known as Poa annua, P-O-A-A-N-N-U-A. Very mature. It's a tough weed to control. We use pre-emergence in the fall to try to knock it out, but also there are some post-emergent products, especially for warm season grass. It's harder to control from a post-emergent standpoint on a cool season lawn, but the good thing is it doesn't stick out as bad on a cool season lawn as it does in a warm season lawn. You can see this is going to seed here. And it's a little early to get into the sedges because there's not a whole lot visible in the lawn right now, but I want to at least talk to you about them, show you this one. So the way we want to differentiate between our sedges, and there's different types of kyllinga and things of that nature, but I typically group them in purple nutsedge, yellow nutsedge, and kyllinga, and that's going to be helpful, especially from a weed control perspective, because one product may control yellow, nutsedge, and kyllinga, but not do much on purple. One may do good on purple and yellow, but not much on kyllinga. So you need to understand that. And then of course there's some that can work on all three. The way we differentiate typically between yellow and purple nutsedge is the purple grows a little bit lower to the ground, where the yellow is going to grow more upright. The yellow also is going to have a sharper point on the end of it, and just generally a lighter colored leaf, where the purple will have a darker colored leaf and a duller point at the end of the leaf. The kyllinga will typically bunch up and have like little spiky balls at the top of it, for lack of a better term there. But usually we're going to use products that have dismiss in them, can give you a good burn down on sedges, but better on the yellow nutsedge and kyllinga, where there's some products like Solero or Certainty that can help control all the different species of sedges, or at least most of them. You got products like Pro Sedge or Sedge Hammer, which will be pretty good on the yellow and purple nutsedge, but not so good on the kyllinga. Well, we didn't cover every single weed that's out there, didn't get to show you as many warm season weeds as I wanted just because of the time of year, but I hope this video has been helpful for you. Again, correct me where I was wrong in the description. If you want to get in weed control and fertilization like me, there's a lot of resources over at lawncarelife.com, including the Weed Control and Fertilization Academy, which I recommend to people that are wanting to get into weed control and fertilization business with warm season grasses. I typically don't recommend it those with cool season grasses. I'm also in the finishing stages of the Bermuda Zoysia Academy, where I'm teaching people how to take care of Bermuda and Zoysia lawns. That's available now at lawncarelife.com, and I'm putting up the final videos to it. So if you were to buy that, you'll be getting the final videos added to the course soon. Thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you guys in the next video.